Hi, it's Melissa, and I'm here today to tell you about The Bet Takers. This is a short read, or in this case, a short audiobook, that is the beginning of my Billionaires of Silicon Forest series. In each of the books, I mention the last man standing bet that the six billionaires make, and I decided it might be fun to actually write how the bet started. So this happens 5 years before those books take place. It's narrated by Stella Hunter and Andrew Eiden, who also narrated all of the audiobooks, and they do a fabulous job and just bring the stories to life in a way I never imagined. So happy listening, and I really hope you enjoy The Billionaires of Silicon Forest.
Iris, 5 years ago. Chapter 1. Stifling yet another yawn, Iris Butler glanced at the clock on the fancy microwave that cost more than everything she owned. A breath caught in her throat. No, that time couldn't be correct. Her gaze zeroed in on the digital numbers. 9:45. The air sucked from her lungs as if the new meal vacuum cleaner was positioned over her mouth. No, no, no! Her muscles bunched into tight marbles not even a hot shower would loosen. Her confidence about pulling off the Sunday game day party plummeted and burst into flames. It was over before it had begun. Guests would arrive at 10. Where had the time gone? She'd been up since 4 to put the pork shoulder in the slow cooker and prepare for the breakfast buffet and lunch, but that hadn't been early enough. Not when the lingering aroma reminded her of working in her parents' restaurant and how someone had always been there to lend a hand. Of the good times before everything fell apart. Stop. The past was behind her. The present was great. The future would be fantastic. Iris scurried around the kitchen's island that doubled as a breakfast bar. She didn't want to disappoint her best friend, Dash, a.k.a. Dashiell Cabot, a new billionaire at 23. She glanced at the great room. The open floor plan came in handy for events like this, but everything needed to be perfect. For the first time, Dash's friends, who called him Wonder Kid, were coming over to watch football. This was huge. Not to him, because not much except video games and the cool stuff his company did excited Dash. But this would be good for him. Usually, he went over to whoever was hosting the game day. Now that he'd bought a house, a mansion, and the new furniture had finally arrived, he'd offered to host. Or, rather, his friends told him he was up this week. Good for them for making him take his turn. Not that it would be a hardship for Dash. All he had to do was invite the 6 men. The rest fell to Iris, and she didn't mind at all. She would happily do this for him. Iris studied the coffee table. Something was missing. Coasters. She added more to the end tables, too. The furniture had only arrived 3 days ago. Too soon for condensation rings to mar the surface. That's better. Sure, Dash could afford to replace them every day, but why should he? She glanced around. Looks good. Let's hope Dash's friends like it and the food. They will. Iris jumped. Her hand flew to her chest, and she turned toward her friend. Don't sneak up on me. This isn't a video game. Dash stood with his hands in front of him, his palms facing her. Geek. But a lovable, even a gorgeous one, in a faded green t-shirt and gray ratty sweatpants. Dash never dressed to impress, but he'd put in 0 effort for his guests today. Wasn't sneaking, but sorry. You should be. Dash had been her best friend for 10 years, but he'd also become her roommate and boss as of 12 months ago. They weren't sharing this place, though. She lived in the guest cottage in the backyard. She was his housekeeper and cook, but their friendship was unshakable. It had survived the aftermath of his parents' divorce, her mother's illness and death, and her father selling their restaurant and house before moving out of state without Iris. Not to mention an embarrassing almost kiss when she fancied herself in love with him that was better left forgotten. Stay up late gaming? She asked. As if on cue, he yawned. I got a couple of hours of sleep. He glanced at the breakfast buffet she'd set out on the table and made a beeline for the pantry where he removed a box of Pop-Tarts. Typical Dash. He never changed. Iris tilted her head toward the oven. I'm baking an egg casserole. He sniffed. Smells good. There's also the pork for the sliders. His blue eyes twinkled the same way they had when he reached a new game level or had a successful IPO. The guys will love everything. Iris wished she shared his confidence. They're all tech billionaires. Not Henry. Henry Davenport is a trust fund baby and still a billionaire. They're like me. Right. And a package from Tiffany's was on the way to Iris. She nearly snorted. The only thing she'd ever held from Tiffany's was a box, and an empty one at that, she'd found in a thrift store. Still, for a few seconds, she'd dreamed about something beautiful and precious and specially picked for her being inside. It had been a lovely daydream, but this was Dash's new reality. Guys who you've befriended, she reminded. This is the first time they're coming over. Until 2 weeks ago, I didn't have a house. He glanced around with an odd expression. It's nice, but I miss our apartment. The 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment had been both a work and a living space. Dash built his company after dropping out of college his junior year. It had been her home, too, after he brought her there when she found herself homeless and jobless thanks to her dad. Forget the past. You can hang out there if you'd like. You're still paying rent, she said. He'd signed another year lease even though he'd bought the house. I wasn't ready to let it go. Like your old gaming systems? She teased. I enjoy them. He grinned more like a preteen than a 23-year-old man. You prefer things to stay the same. He'd been that way since they were 13. That was how long they'd been friends. Since then, he'd gotten smarter and taller. He was now 6'4", but still lanky, which was why he'd surprised her by having her move into his apartment after she'd called him. Standing outside the home where she'd grown up with nowhere to go and only a few dollars to her name. She owed him big time. Dash shrugged, but the defiant gleam in his eyes told another story. Nothing wrong with that. He was so cute. Nothing at all. Iris adjusted the throw pillows she'd purchased yesterday. They complemented the new couches. The leather was butter soft and a soothing chestnut color. Stop fussing. Dash pulled his Pop-Tart from the toaster. Everything is fine. Not even close. I have a few things left to do. She had the pre-game show on mute and turned up the volume. They're coming to watch football. Dash didn't grab a plate or a napkin or even a paper towel. As he held the Pop-Tart, she watched for any crumbs dropping. Anal? Yes, but she wanted today to be perfect. She removed the fruit tray from the fridge and took it to the table. She would keep the buffet full of breakfast foods until noon, then switch over to lunch items. Growing up and working in her parents' restaurant, plus 6 months of culinary school, was paying off. If only she enjoyed cleaning the house as much as cooking, but she took pride in her domestic goddess skills improving. Iris, you're trying way too hard. You pay me to take care of the house and cook. Give me a place to live. I won't take advantage of my best friend. You can if you want. Friends forever, remember? A ball of heat settled at the center of her chest. Dash was the one person she could always count on, and vice versa. I remember, but you have new friends now. New, but they're not you. They're wealthy men who will never replace you. He finished his Pop-Tart, brushed his hands, and then walked over and hugged her. I wouldn't be where I am without you, Iris. Nothing will change that or us. She glanced at the dream gourmet kitchen. That it was part of a luxurious mansion with a charming guest cottage for her to call her own was the icing. Dash was the cake. I know. The oven timer buzzed. She put on oven mitts, removed the casserole dish, and placed it on the trivet. The serving spoon was already in place. Remind me who's coming? Adam Zeal is the definition of responsible. He sometimes acts like the oldest, but that honor belongs to Wes Lockhart. The Lockharts were famous in Portland. Old money and lots of it. People spoke fondly of Mrs. Lockhart, but Mr. Lockhart and his son, Wes, had a take-no-prisoners reputation. He wasn't someone she would ever want to work for, given everything she'd heard around town and read. Having money didn't mean that it gave a person the license to be ruthless and a jerk. Still, Iris repeated the two names in her head to lock them into her memory. Blaze Mortensen can be gruff, but don't let that bother you. He's solid underneath. Probably a good idea to keep her distance from the guy. Kieran O'Neill is the definition of nice. His mom used to work for his company, but she retired. Must be close to his family. He is. Mason Reese developed TVT. Iris's jaw dropped. I have that. Everyone has his social media app, which is why he's so successful. But he's a huge jokester. It's hard to know whether or not he's serious. Sounds like an interesting group. Yes, but Henry Davenport is in a league by himself. He's always late, prefers to make a grand entrance. Henry Davenport's reputation preceded him. He was the only one of Dash's friends coming over today who didn't work. She'd heard so many stories about him. He was a Portland legend. She wanted to see if the guy was truly larger than life. I've read articles about him for years. They're all likely true. Henry has never worked, and he plans to keep it that way. Iris couldn't imagine it. Must be nice. I'd be bored out of my mind. I might be too. However, she would like the opportunity to see if that was correct. She surveyed the table once more. Bacon. I forgot the bacon. She grabbed a hot pad, removed the platter from the warming drawer, and placed it on another trivet. How had she missed that? She studied the table again to make sure she hadn't forgotten anything else. Dash came closer. You have enough food to feed a football team. I don't want anyone to go hungry. That won't happen. He snagged a donut hole. It was a miracle he didn't have a mouthful of cavities. Keep this up and everyone will want to hire you to do the cooking on game day. Iris stood taller. I wouldn't mind that. The more money she made, the sooner she could get on with the rest of her life. The doorbell rang. That will probably be Adam. Dash grabbed another donut hole. He's always on time, or early. Maybe he'll rub off on you, Iris teased. No need. As Dash headed out of the kitchen, he glanced over his shoulder at her. I've got you to get me where I need to be. I won't be here forever, Iris said, but he didn't seem to hear her. No worries. If she worked another year for Dash, she would have enough money saved to make her dreams come true. Returning to culinary school and becoming a chef. Dash would be okay without her living here, despite what he claimed. She needed him way more than he needed her.
Chapter 2. The first game had almost been over when Henry Davenport arrived, but he hadn't been in a rush to get there. He'd been out late, so he slept in. Football wasn't why he was here. His friends were the reason. He enjoyed spending time with them, even if their eyes focused on the enormous TV screen and not on him. Henry preferred to be the center of attention, but he kept the guys entertained during the commercials. He scrolled through Instagram. So many fake influencers. The sponsors should check better. Wes cheered. So did Blaze. Henry glanced up. Something must have happened during the game. He considered cheering, but no one expected him to participate in what he called football chatter. He was here for the delicious food, tasty beverages, and these 6 men who worked way too many hours. If Sunday was his only time with them, he'd deal with the sport from September through early February. Especially when today they had a new addition to the group. a fresh-faced, capable housekeeper named Iris. He didn't know where Dash had found her, but Iris's cooking and cleaning skills were superb. His friend didn't seem interested in her. Not surprising with these tech geeks. That led Henry to consider offering her a job. He could easily double or triple whatever Dash paid her. Henry, too, had a guest cottage plus more empty bedroom suites than he knew what to do with. It would be nice to have someone on his household staff who was the same age, 28 or younger than him. He missed their old housekeeper, Ms. Matthews, who lived in the apartment above the garage with her son, Brett. They had given Henry a built-in playmate and friend growing up. Oh, he still saw Brett, but it wasn't the same now that he no longer lived on the same estate. Sometimes Henry got lonely. He shouldn't when he was worth more than the 6 men in this room combined and could buy or do whatever he wanted. Perhaps he was as spoiled as everyone claimed, because how could someone like him be lonely? One phone call in his house or wherever else he wanted to go would be jam-packed. Granted, he would be paying the bill. A commercial came on, thank goodness. It was Henry's time to take control. He'd heard about their work success, but blah. The thought of having to do a job each day hurt his stomach. He would rather get his money through family and investments. Wasn't that called passive income? Whatever the name, it was the only way to go. He didn't know how these guys put in 80, 90, and often over 100 hours a week. That was the stuff of nightmares. He shivered. His friends couldn't keep up the pace, no matter how dedicated they were to the companies they founded. That begged the question. I need an update. Who are the lovely ladies in your lives? Any girlfriends? Are we talking in real life or virtual? Dash asked. Go make another billion, Wonder Kid, Wes joked. The others laughed. Henry, however, wasn't amused. We'll pass over Master Dashel for now. How about the rest of you? Adam shook his head. No one. That surprised Henry, even if most women were more interested in a billionaire's net worth than true love. I thought you were going out with someone. I took a friend of a friend to Lycone for dinner, but it didn't go anywhere. Adam drank from a beer bottle. It never does. Kieran raised his drink. Same here. Ditto, Mason said. Or would that be Trito? Dash snorted. Don't ask us. You're the communications guru, connecting the globe with your TVT app. I'm too busy to date. Blaze glanced up from his phone. If I go out, the woman knows it means nothing. Henry rolled his eyes. Aren't you a smooth talker? Leave him alone. Wes stepped into the big brother role so quickly. Then again, he always had. Henry and Wes's parents had been friends, which meant they'd known each other their entire lives. For good and for bad. It's hard to date when I'm working 120 hours a week, Wes added. His words made Henry want to shower. Is that what you told your date last night? All eyes shot to Wes. Wes grimaced. What? You didn't mention a date on the group chat, Adams said, with a hint of accusation in his voice. I went to a charity dinner and took a +1, that's all. Wes kept his tone even. I doubt I'll see her again. Why not? The question shot from Henry's lips. She was lovely, with long blonde hair and a gorgeous smile. Way out of Lockhart's league, which might explain why she left with a man old enough to be her grandfather. He was her grandfather's best friend, Wes clarified. Henry flashed his infamous whatever expression. It usually got a laugh and didn't fail him this time. You didn't get a goodnight kiss and the old geezer who's probably her new sugar granddaddy did. But that's not the point. Kieran leaned forward on the couch. What is? The 6 of you are successful in business, yet you act like prepubescent boys with women. No game at all. Not true, Mason quipped. Dash, Wes, and Adam nodded, posturing as if to prove themselves. Blaze's jaw jutted forward. I've got game. I've got more game than him, Kieran said. Blaze scoffed. Seriously? We can put some money on that, but full transparency, I'll win. This was worse than what Henry imagined. The 6 were ridiculous. When was the last time one of you brought a date to game day? The six looked at each other. Henry lost his patience. Never. Iris is here. Dash glanced over his shoulder at the kitchen. She must have gone out to the guest cottage. She'll be back. Are you and Iris dating? Henry asked. Dash shook his head adamantly. We're best friends. Henry enjoyed poking the bear, or in this case, Wonder Kid. Friends date? A sour expression pinched Dash's face. What part of no don't you understand? Leave the kid alone. Wes motioned to the TV, then to all of them. Game days are for us. Adam nodded. Besides, I wouldn't introduce just anyone to you guys. It would have to be serious, Blaze added. Someone special, Karen agreed. Which is why no one has brought a date to game day, Mason said. The worst part, they appeared to believe that nonsense. Henry threw up his hands, literally and figuratively. At this rate, I bet you'll all end up single. Don't give up on us yet. Dash poked his finger through a hole in his sweats as if bored and looking for something to entertain himself. We're still young, though I can't see myself getting married. Me either, Mason agreed. We're young and wealthy. Why settle down? Henry shook his head. Because you're living up to the stereotype of a tech geek. Working all the time and having an obscene amount of money won't keep you warm at night. That's what forced air heating and blankets are for, Dash quipped. That didn't deter Henry. Those things don't comfort you if something goes wrong or nurse you back to health if you get sick, Wes smirked. When are you getting married, Henry? Not this again. Henry blew out a breath. We're not talking about me. I'm in a completely different position than the rest of you. But if I choose to marry, which I don't because it wouldn't be fair to womankind to limit myself to only one of them, I would and I wouldn't wait. Did you know married men live longer? Anecdotal evidence, Blaze blurted. Perhaps, but Henry hadn't researched the article he read, so he said nothing. Wes's gaze sharpened. No wonder he was known as a shark in business. The intensity in his eyes would intimidate anyone sitting across from him at a conference table. Why do you care so much? I have no siblings, Henry admitted, though the press had reported on his life since his birth. It would be nice if my friends had children and named me godfather. Uncle Henry has a nice ring to it. He got the warm fuzzies thinking about it. 6 pairs of eyes stared at him, even though the commercials had ended. What? He asked. Adam opened his mouth before closing it. No one else said anything. As everyone focused on the TV, someone muttered, Nothing? Wrong. Henry was only looking out for his friends, and he would make them understand that, no matter what it took. Epilogue. As the clock ticked down to halftime, Henry fought his rising boredom. But soon there would be time for him to convince them they needed women who would become girlfriends who turned into wives. Iris had returned from wherever she'd been. The lunch she was setting out on the table smelled amazing, reminding him of meals with his mom and dad. He missed them so much. Some days Henry wished he'd been on the plane with them when it crashed. The whistle blew, and the 2 teams left the field. About time. He rubbed his hands on the thighs of his pants. I put out more food, Iris said from the kitchen. I'll be upstairs in the laundry room if anyone needs anything. Thanks, Iris. Dash stood and headed to the table. Others joined him, including Henry. Mason filled a plate with pulled pork sliders, sweet potato French fries, and coleslaw. I keep thinking about what you said. Which part? Henry dipped a fry into the small bowl of sauce and took a bite. Aioli, so good. About us settling down? And? Henry straightened. Mason was the last one he would have expected to take him seriously, but miracles happened. Mason beamed brighter than the solitaire display case at Tiffany's. I propose a bet. What kind of bet? Dash asked. The last single man standing bet, Mason explained. We each put in money. Anyone who gets married is out. Whoever is the last one to be single wins all the money. Henry sighed. He should have known Mason wouldn't understand. That isn't what I had in mind. Wes poured himself a whiskey. It's an interesting idea. Adam nodded. He raised his beer bottle. What's a little competition among friends? Don't forget the bragging rights, Kieran added. Blaze rubbed his chin. I have a new investment algorithm I've been working on. We'll use the bet money as a beta test, so no management fees. How much money? Dash asked. Most of mine is on paper and not in my bank account. Blaze tilted his head. $1 million each? Wes laughed. Let's make it more interesting. 10. Kieran picked up a brownie. 10 million is doable. Not sure I can swing that much right now. Dash bit his lip. Soon, though. I'll cover Wonder Kid's part for now, Wes said. Dash grinned. Thanks, Wes. Awesome. A smug expression formed on Mason's face. So, is everyone in? Yes, Blaze said. Adam nodded. Wes flashed a thumbs-up sign. I am, Kieran said. Sure, Dash added. What about you, Henry? No way. Henry's chest tightened. A headache threatened to erupt. But you should bet on the first man to be married, not who'll be single the longest. Their wager went against everything he wanted to achieve. None of us are dating, as you pointed out. Wicked laughter lit Wes's eyes. Mason's bet makes the most sense under the circumstances, especially if they were trying to upset Henry. Okay, so that means 6 are taking the bet. We'll each put in 10 million, and Blaze will use his beta program to invest the 60 million, Adam explained. Everyone agreed? The 6 men did. Of course they did. Henry downed whatever drink was in front of him. Whiskey. He tried not to choke or cough. Should there be rules? Kieran asked. Like, what if we all get married around the same time? Think we'll find 6 brides for 6 billionaires? Wes joked. Everyone laughed. Everyone but Henry. Though that gave him the kernel of an idea. Mason picked up a carrot stick. If we all get married within a year of the first person, we'll split whatever money is in the investment account. Blaze nodded. That sounds fair. Or you could donate it to charity, Henry suggested. He hated to think he was the only rational person here. That wasn't his role. He was the over-the-top, fun-loving party-until-it's-dawn one, never the logical one or the common-sense guy. We could make that decision then, not now, Mason suggested. The others agreed. Mason held out his hand. The other 5 put theirs on top like they were players on a sports team. The last single man standing bet is on 3. It's on! They cheered, and they stepped away from each other. Henry swallowed a sigh. I need another drink. Don't look so sad. Wes nudged him with his elbow. I'm sure you have other friends who can give you a godchild. He did. Plus, there was also Brett, who wasn't friends with these guys yet, but someday. Besides, your stupid bet won't keep me from trying. I'm a matchmaker extraordinaire. Mason nearly spewed whatever he was drinking. He swallowed before laughing. Keep telling yourself that. Henry didn't have to. The 6 of them would see. Oh, he'd let the bet-takers enjoy themselves for now, but then he would make sure each of them met the right woman, fell in love, and got married. He just had to be patient. Not a strong point of his, but it would take time for him to figure out who to introduce to each man. Once he did, watch out. He was a man with a mission. No way would he fail.